All right, I suggest that we kick this off. So good morning, everybody, and thank you all for joining our virtual session on reshaping the workspace with Citrix, Microsoft, and IGEL. My name is Nazar, and I will be your host during this 1 hour long session. The events of the past year forced us to transition to a different way of working, as you all know. However, this transition raises questions on its own. How do we make the workspace more agile, for example? How do we keep it secure? And how does all that result in a more productive workspace? Today, my colleagues Rogier Van der Ven from Microsoft, Arjan Van Taal from Citrix, and Jan Stroombergen from IGEL will explain how their successful partnership and the combination of their leading solutions can reshape your customer's workspace in an agile, secure, and more productive environment. If you have any questions during this webinar for one of our guests, feel free to ask them in the Q&A section, which can be found at the right top of your screen. We will discuss these questions at the end of the session. As always, the webinar is also being recorded so that you and other people who were not able to join will still have the opportunity to rewatch it. I would also like to invite you all to put you on mute so that we don't have any interference. And let's kick it off. So please enjoy the session, and we'll kick this off with Rogier Van der Ven. Take it away, Rogier.
Yes, thank you. So the most asked question, can you hear me and can you see my slide deck?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Rogier Van der Ven. I'm working for Microsoft in the Global Black Belt team. I'm a sales lead, and I'm focused only on Windows Virtual Desktop. And today I want to talk about the business value of Windows Virtual Desktop. So, what do we mean with the business value? First of all, I will explain what I mean with business value. Perhaps you already understand or we saw before the business model canvas. And there are two important things what you can see here. So we deliver products and services, but we have a goal with that. So one of the thing is, how can we relieve the pain? So how can we solve pain points of our customers? But what also very important is, which gain do you create out of the services you offer to your customer in order to make to get happier customers? So what are the pains I'm going to talk about? There are much more pain points, of course, but I want to focus on just 4 of them, the 4 pain points that customers ask a lot of questions about. And one of the thing is, how can I grow revenue? How can I reduce cost? How can I transform the organization? And how can I mitigate risks? These are, I think, the most 4 important one we heard about last year. So the first one, how can I grow revenue? Now it's maybe quite obvious. Innovate faster than the competition. So it's easy to talk about it and easy to present that, but you need creative people in your organization, and probably you don't have them always. But to stay ahead of the competition, you have to create new services to existing markets or new services to new markets. And if you are able to do that, so what are the gains you get out of it? That's quite easy, it's quite obvious. You can increase revenue for new and existing customers. But what is the role of Windows Virtual Desktop? Which role can we play in that? First of all, with Windows Virtual Desktop, we provide a premium consistent desktop solution. The nice thing about Windows Virtual Desktop, it's always green. You don't have to think about your hardware or your software anymore, because it's always there. And you have always the latest and the greatest hardware. So these are the pain points we solve. But what is the gain you get out of it? You can always increase the performance at any time of the moment, at the end time of the day, which results in faster innovation. The second one. Maybe not providing, not providing expensive laptops to employees. But you also can think about cut real estate costs. So do I still need that amount of square meters of my company? And increase productivity, of course. If you can do more with less, then yeah, you get more out of it. So you can also cut the costs in that way. So what you can do is replacing expensive laptops, for example, with thin clients. What you also can do is embedding from office-based resources. So maybe we have in the Benelux, we are maybe very spoiled employees. So we have maybe the best resources. But when I look throughout EMEA, there are still a lot of heavy workstations based on desktops. So it's not everywhere. So if you can combine them, yeah, you can save square meters. But also important is how fast can you update your tools and applications very quickly. So if you are able to do that, what are the gains you get out of it? Now, the gains you get out of it is the lowered capital expenditure for employee computers. And you can reduce your real estate expense as % of operations. Of course, reduced IT cost, but another thing, but very important, is a faster time to market. But what is the role we play? What's the role Windows Virtual Desktop play in this game? With Windows Virtual Desktop, you don't need very expensive laptops anymore because the compute power is delivered by Azure and not by your local laptop anymore. It's very easy to rapid device provisioning with no IT help for example, software installation. And because it's centralized, it's managed centralized, so you can reduce labor costs. So what is the gain you get out of it? So with Windows Virtual Desktop, you can work from anywhere, from any device, bring your own device, which can result in increase of productivity. Another topic, which we hear often, how can I transform the organization? Now with COVID, it was obvious last year, but it's still very difficult for a lot of companies to allow employees work remotely and securely while still having access to tools and data. So enabling work from anywhere at any time. I think it's very important as an employer to give your employee a better work and life balance. So what you can do is moving tools and resources to the cloud for 24/7 access to company data, so that you don't have to go to your office to access your company data. So if you are able to do that, so what are the gains you get out of it? Now, perhaps you get a better employee satisfaction. Nowadays, very important. But also important is a great employee retention. Hiring new people costs a lot of money. You can better keep your people where you're proud of. And improvement of employee productivity. If people are happier, they work harder and it will increase your productivity. So what is the role of Windows Virtual Desktop? With Windows Virtual Desktop is you can faster implement the newest technology, increase focus time. So what do I mean with that? For example, you are a data engineer and you run simulations and you run an application, and this application for every simulation, it costs you maybe 1 hour to wait for when the simulation is finished. If you can change your hardware for that specific application, that instead of waiting 1 hour, you can wait for you have to wait for 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, you can do more in the same time. So you will stay focused on the things you're doing. What you also can think about is that for certain applications that you want to run, you don't have the hardware because your laptop isn't supported that software, that specific application. You need more hardware, heavier hardware, a big CPU or a big GPU in it. And the nice thing about Windows Virtual Desktop, you can instantaneously get that virtual machine met with that biggest CPU and that biggest GPU in it. So that means, what is the gain if you can get that you can faster implement modernized applications, new applications to your desktop environment. And the last one is, how can I mitigate risks? Very important one. Improve customer data security. People are working from home now, since last year. And yeah, do you control the security of your customer data? It will be very hard, what we saw last year. So what you can do is storing data centrally in the cloud, but not on personal computers. That's what you don't want. So what are the gains if you're able to do that? Prevent losing sensitive data, for example, or better protection of your company data, company IP, intellectual property. So what is the role of Windows Virtual Desktop? Which role does Windows Virtual Desktop play in that? For example, the enhanced security with simplified configuration. It's very easy to create policy that, for example, you are not allowed to copy data from your Windows Virtual Desktop environment, so from your company data, to your laptop, for example. It's easy to create this kind of policy. And you can do that when the data is centralized, controlled centralized. It also prevents you from the loss of data, for example. It's easier to create backups and restores and disaster recovery when the data is centralized. But what is, I think, a little bit more important is what is the gain you will get out of it. And I know in EMEA, everyone knows that we have to be or stay GDPR compliant. So with Windows Virtual Desktop, you can prevent accidentally data leakage. And I think this is also one of the important advantage of Windows Virtual Desktop, what you can achieve with this technology. Just to summarize, so my last slide. So what business value brings Windows Virtual Desktop to you? It will bring you the fastest way to innovation. You have always the latest and the greatest technology available. And the nice thing is you get more performance over time because you always get the latest and the greatest virtual machine, and they are always faster than the virtual machine before. But that's also for the compute power and for the bandwidth, of course. But it will also get cheaper over time. The prices will decrease over time. And with Windows Virtual Desktop, a very important one, you can also create the most secure environment. We are convinced about that. But we are not alone in this field. We have to work with Citrix and IGEL, for example. And those two partners are very important for Windows Virtual Desktop. And both of these two companies, they add a lot of value, extra business value on top of Windows Virtual Desktop. And with that, I would like to hand over to Arjan Van Taal from Citrix, who will talk about the business value of Citrix on top of Windows Virtual Desktop. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Rogier. Can everybody see my screen and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Let's kick it off. So thanks again, Rogier Van der Ven from Microsoft, for your compelling story about WVD. Windows Virtual Desktop Services is really an interesting value proposition for both our customers as well as our partners being in this webinar. And thank you also, Arrow, for organizing this event. I think it's a very strong signal to see that we have the alliances set up together with Microsoft and IGEL as an ecosystem to deliver value to both customers as well as partners. So my name is Arjan Van Taal. I'm a representative of the Citrix Benelux organization, and I focus on the alliance management of the alliances in the Benelux. And one of the most important one is the Microsoft Alliance. Why? Well, I'll tell you more about that in this story. So this presentation is all about the added value that Citrix virtual apps and desktop services can bring on top of Windows Virtual Desktop and Azure in general. So just be aware that Citrix is more than just virtual apps and desktops. But for the sake of this presentation, I will limit myself to this topic. So you've already been in this business for quite some years, and you've seen the motion from on-prem to cloud services. And there's already a lot of added value to move your workloads to cloud services. But one of the most important ones is, of course, the total cost of ownership. And total cost of ownership is maybe a weird word for cloud services because you don't own stuff. We live in a DOS era. Don't own stuff. Everything is moved to the cloud and you only consume resources. Moving your Windows workloads to cloud using Citrix virtual apps and desktop services together with Azure and WVD can reduce the total cost of, well, ownership in this case. So total cost of ownership can be reduced by 70%. So together with Citrix, Microsoft, and ecosystem partners like IGEL, we can deliver an enormous cost saving. These cost savings are based on infrastructure savings, operational savings, and license savings. So it's all about Citrix cloud services with Microsoft Azure. And again, this is a weird statement because it's not with Microsoft Azure, it's actually running in Microsoft Azure. And Citrix cloud services is the Citrix as a service subscription that customers can consume. It can be consumed on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, or maybe like a 3-year period. And it's all about improved economics and, like Rogier mentioned, business value. So what is this savings all about? So compared to on-prem VDI, we reduce the licensing cost, we reduce operational cost and infrastructure costs. And you get all these free benefits as well, like business resiliency, data recovery. So if you compare on-prem VDI with the Citrix with WVD, what exactly does WVD add to the equation? What exactly do we add as value on top of WVD? Well, there's 3 topics that I'd like to address. And the most important, I think, is the hybrid multi-cloud environments. Hybrid multi-cloud means that you still have resources running on-prem as well as going to Windows Virtual Desktop. And we see a lot of activities at customers that are actually doing a proof of concept with WVD native, which we'd really recommend because that testing of WVD is really key to understand and experience the benefits of WVD. But to be realistic, there's also a lot of workloads still on-prem. In fact, globally, we have 400,000 users, I must say customers, running Citrix still in an environment. Most of them are still on-prem. And that by itself is a gigantic opportunity for us as partners to transition from on-prem to Azure using WVD managed by Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Services. And this might also be a good moment to talk about the difference between Citrix Cloud Service and the workloads. Because the old term Citrix Farm actually meant that we have everything installed on-prem. All the management components as well as the virtual machines. So the physical servers running the hypervisors, virtual machine, etc. So if we separate these 2 topics, the management plane and the workloads, you could say that the Citrix Cloud Services is actually a subscription, Citrix as a service, which does the management of the resources. And these resources can still reside on-prem as well as in the public cloud. So with Citrix Cloud Services, we can actually manage the migration from on-prem workloads to Windows Virtual Desktop in a unified way. So it's not necessary to have 2 separate environments. It's one environment managing both the on-prem as well as the WVD environment. And that multi-hybrid cloud doesn't really stop with just WVD and Azure. some customers also require to have other public clouds in the equation as well. And with Citrix Cloud Service, we can manage all these environments in a unified way. We actually bring all the value that we have delivered in the last 30 years on top of on-premises to that world. So we can leverage all the benefits like application layering, environment management to that environment as well. So customers looking at WVD native, doing a proof of concept, great. But sometime they will find out that the world isn't 100% vanilla in Azure, and there is a lot of on-prem workloads as well that need to be migrated to Azure over time. And we can do actually a session in session, having a Windows Virtual Desktop Service running on WVD, where actually applications are still running on-prem and being published in a Windows Virtual Desktop Service towards the end user. So that's a true hybrid multi-cloud approach. The second thing is we can optimize operations. We can optimize it and actually save cost because we actually have the tools already in place to do application management, to actually provision virtual machines. Long-time Citrix veterans know that we have two ways of provisioning Windows workloads, being machine creation services and provisioning services. And we already are looking at delivering PVS, so provisioning services, towards the Azure environment as well. The third pillar is the secure experience. So secure experience actually means that it goes hand in hand. Enhancing the security as well as optimizing experience. We have granular control of who's using what from what device, and we can actually put analytics on top of it to see who's doing what, and also make sure that we have guardrails to make sure that our users are staying within the boundaries. We can do session recording, we can do watermarking to really optimize the secure experience. And on top of that, we also have the Teams optimization, which we have done for on-prem workloads, but also for WVD workloads. And I know that Jan Stroombergen from IGEL will talk more about the optimization of Teams on their endpoints together with Citrix and WVD. So let's compare the total cost of ownership or usage from native WVD and Citrix with WVD. Because there's also a lot of discussion in the market about, okay, why do we still need Citrix when WVD does it all? Why should we add costs while WVD might also bring that value? And we see that with WVD and Citrix, we can actually save additional cost compared to WVD native. And we see that in three areas. We see that in Citrix, or the licensing cost, the operational cost, and the infrastructure cost. One of the things in the infrastructure costs is that on top of WVD, we see a lot of companies that actually provide additional value on WVD. We call their third-party Windows add-ons that do a specific task, like monitoring, like printing, like user management or application layering. All these point solutions are already included in Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Services. So taking that away from the equation and having Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops, you can actually save about $100 per user per year by just leveraging the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service. So if you look at it in a graphical way, and we use an example of like 1,000 users running Windows 10 multi-session, we see that there's an expense for WVD native, and we see that there's a premium price to have Citrix licensing, or I must say subscriptions on top of that. But if you compare all these savings that we can achieve, like operational savings, like analytics, compute savings, network savings, storage savings, and also auto-scaling, so turning machines off when you really don't need it, you see that the total cost of ownership with WVD with Citrix is like 30% lower than WVD native. So we see that we already have a lot of cost saving moving from on-prem to Citrix Cloud Services. And if you compare Citrix Cloud Services WVD with Citrix Cloud Services WVD and Citrix, you can even add additional cost saving. If you'd like to experience a little bit more about these numbers, I really recommend you to go to this online calculator, which can do the cost calculations with Citrix compared to Citrix with WVD compared with Citrix with WVD. Here you can modify your input, put down the number of users, also the workloads, and see what the value is of Citrix with virtual desktops and with WVD standalone. I'll put in the link as well as the QR code. Another thing to mention is the white paper that we also delivered. Again, the link and the QR code. This white paper actually has more details about the presentation that I just gave about all the benefits that we have. So to summarize it, before I go to my last slide, so bear with me. Well, to summarize it, going from on-prem to Citrix Cloud Services to WVD brings a lot of benefits as well as cost saving. And the good news is that we already have like 400,000 customers. And there's a huge opportunity for the Belux market to transition them from on-prem to cloud services. And especially with existing customers, we can do a transition of the licenses, reducing their costs even further. So I found one really compelling story about a customer called IGEL. And Jan Stroombergen will talk more about the solutions that they have. But besides the solutions that they have, they also are a customer from both Microsoft as well as Citrix. And here you see that IGEL has taken advantage of that solution. And you see the key benefits are exactly the ones that I just mentioned in my presentation. With that, I'd like to hand over to Jan Stroombergen from IGEL. Thank you very much.
So now it's my turn to ask, do you see my screen? And do you hear me? I suppose you do.
Yeah, and we see you. So.
And you see us? Well, me too. Okay, cool. So I'm like the third one in the story. I'm completing the story, and my title is Microsoft, Citrix and IGEL Better Together. And I think it will make sense at the end of my slide deck. So let me start by saying why you would consider adding IGEL endpoints to your solution. And it's all about completing the strategy. And what I mean with that is, this is important for any infrastructure, and it applies to actually any endpoint device. But of course, I'm a bit biased to say so, but mostly to IGEL, of course. But what I mean with this is, if you decide to go to any form of VDI or central computing, whatever technology it is, WVD or Citrix or anything else that you might imagine, can't imagine which one, but anyway, if you would go to a Citrix or Windows Virtual Desktop or a mix of both, then you do that from a strategy point of view. What I mean with that is, as a company, you want to simplify your organization, you want to better manage your desktops, you want to make them more secure, and in the end, you want to save money. So in other words, the famous TCO word is important. That is a very good step. Now, what I always tell people is, if you bring your desktops to the server side, then you will manage them server side, and you will benefit greatly from that step because you have that central management. But if you leave the traditional PC or Mac with the end user, then you're actually not winning any management. To the contrary, you're losing, because now you're managing two environments. And actually, the most complete solution is by bringing the management on your endpoints down as much as possible, because the more effective you're on the endpoint, the more effective your TCO of the entire solution becomes. And that is actually the key of my presentation. And that is where IGEL excels. And of course, there's other things that play a role, stuff like security. Yeah, everybody knows that with the whole home working move that we've seen the last year due to some virus or something, yeah, we had to work with from home, and people saw that these PCs at home, these devices at home, became potential attacking stuff for people and hackers and all this malware stuff. And a third thing is that, and I still think it's the strongest message Citrix ever had, was the any device, anytime, anywhere. Yeah, that is also something that a lot of people want to adopt. We see a large variety of end user devices, especially at home. People are recuperating devices using their own PC, using their own Mac, which causes security issues, but which causes also the fact that it's not a unified experience anymore. Not for the user, because his experience changes from home towards the office or the other way around. And also for the administrator, it's not a unified experience anymore. He has to find ways of managing every device on every location in one way or the other. And if you put all these things together, then the power of IGEL becomes extremely clear. Yeah. So now that we know the why, we go to the what. So what is IGEL OS actually? Yeah. Well, a lot of people associate IGEL with thin clients, and that's good and that's bad, because it's good because at least you know what we do, but we are not a thin client vendor anymore. We are an endpoint management vendor. We primarily sell our operating system. We sell it as a software. We do still sell hardware. I'll come back to that later on, but we do sell software first primarily. So we are actually a Linux-based edge OS, as we call it. It's a small, secure, easy to manage OS, and it runs on virtually any x86 64-bit hardware. And we even support some Raspberry Pi models nowadays. And it allows you to connect securely to your workspaces, whatever they are, through a central, simple configuration. And it allows you to reuse devices if you want to. Yeah, and I'll get back to the different scenarios in 2 slides. But you can reuse PCs, and in that scope, it's maybe good to know that today is Earth Day. So if you can reuse something, you should do it. If you want to look at it, we have created a video at IGEL. The link is below. I'm sure Michiel will be able to share it in the chat if you want to check it out. It's a cool 3-minute video, and it explains how IGEL sees our contribution to Earth Day. Now, how do we do it? Yeah, it's quite simple. We have an operating system which you can install on any device. An existing PC, an existing laptop, a thin client of another vendor. In other words, you can reuse whatever that you would like to reuse. Different scenarios. Think about somebody that has old PCs that are probably not capable of running Windows 10 in a decent way, but they're still running Windows 7 or maybe even Windows XP. Do we throw them away or do we reuse them? Probably a slow PC will become a very fast IGEL because our hardware demands are very, very low. So you can convert any existing device in a permanent way by installing our software onto it. The second thing is the obvious thing to do if you want it all from IGEL is buy our IGEL hardware. We have our own hardware. You can buy it and then you just replace it. Yeah, it's not very Earth Day compliant, but still you can do it. And then we have a third scenario, which I call the hybrid one, which is converted temporarily. Yeah, which is our famous UD Pocket. More in the next slides. So the Workspace Edition operating system is actually the keystone or the cornerstone of our solution. It's actually a license. It's used and sold as a license, and it's also managed as a license. That means that you buy the license becomes your own. Yeah, it is valid for the rest of your life, and as long as you have maintenance on it, you can update it, upgrade it, get support on it, And very important, you can roam it, as we call it. And roaming means that you can take it away from a device and put it on a new device. In other words, if you reuse an old PC and that PC falls apart in 2 or 3 or 4 years, you then buy yourself a new platform, a new machine, and put the license on there. So your investment is never lost. And what I mean with that is you can reuse devices, but you can also choose your perfect device. Maybe you need an ultimate portable device. Maybe you need a water resistant device or a dust resistant device. You can buy whatever you like that would apply to your needs. And that's the cool thing. And you can also change this device during the life of the license and during the employee's lifespan within your organization. And that is a very, very cool thing to know. And of course, you have our hardware. And again, I'm not going into detail, just know there are different models. Pick and choose the one you want, depending on performance, depending on connectivity, whatever you like. We've got not such a big range, simply because we just cater for the normal use. If you want something special, there's lots of vendors out there that make the best devices you can get for typical scenarios. We have alliances with people from Lenovo, LG, Dynabook, and hundreds of others that deliver hardware that we are compatible with. There is a program which is called IGEL Ready, which kind of lists all devices that have been tested and certified with our solution. And then you have the third one, which is the UD Pocket. And this is actually a very interesting thing. This allows you to convert a device in a temporary way. In other words, by booting the device from the UD Pocket, it becomes an IGEL. Unplug the UD Pocket, reboot the machine, and it's back to a standard Windows PC or a Mac or whatever device it was. And why is this important? This is important in these forced home user environments. People have to work at home, and to do so, it's difficult to get, in some cases, a device to the end user. But a lot of people have a PC at home, have a device at home. But do you want that device with all its potential issues on your network? Well, maybe not, but you can use the hardware. So just send them a UD Pocket and then let them boot from it and let them use it as a thin client, as an IGEL endpoint during the day, and let them use it as their own PC or Mac in the evening to do their private work. So you're actually reusing it and you're making it a dual boot kind of thing. And if you don't need that personal use, then you can still install the software on it. So you have this hybrid world going into both directions. And the cool thing is that regardless the hardware, once the device is installed, once the device is booted, it is identified by us as an IGEL device. So we don't care about the hardware. We manage it through our management suite as one uniform solution. Yeah, it's scalable, it's autonomous, it's free with a Workspace edition license. So everybody who's got an IGEL can use the management console. There's only one option, which is called the IGEL Cloud Gateway, which is sold in a package called the Enterprise Management Pack, EMP. And that allows you to span the reach of the UMS also over the internet. That is actually a tool. If you want to know more about it, I think it's part of a separate presentation, but I just wanted to give you that terminology because it's an important one. That's what really the tool that allows you to manage devices outside of your network, home users, very remote offices, small offices, these kind of people. So what do you need? Well, actually, as I said, you buy a Workspace edition license per device. You buy the software maintenance for 1, 2, or 3 years. And if you need it for the home users, you buy the Enterprise Management Pack. And then any hardware. Do you want to buy our IGEL hardware, which is very robust and Deutsche Grundlichkeit and 5 years warranty? Be our guest. Do you have hardware you can reuse? Be our guest. Do you have an agreement with another hardware vendor that sells you virtually all hardware and you can make a good deal with them just simply for the hardware? Be our guest too. We don't care. Yeah. And what makes us so powerful is this. This is our IGEL ecosystem. We call it our IGEL Ready ecosystem. It's actually the grouping of the people that we work together with. And of course, the usual suspects, Microsoft, Citrix, are on the top left of your screen. Yeah, these people are our primary partners. Let's be honest. But we work together with lots of people in different regions to enable stuff. Yeah, very hot nowadays is everything which has to do with unified communications. Yeah, think about Zoom, think about Teams, think about Sennheiser or Jabra for headsets, all these kind of things. So you see, we have a whole bunch of people we are working together with. On the left bottom, you see all the hardware brands that we work with. So there's lots of stuff that we do: security vendors, smart card readers, two-factor authentication, you name it. Yeah, it's all being supported. Now, I just wanted to use this one. It's not representing the customer in itself, but as Rogier and Arjan already told you, we have actually a customer that combines all three products, and he's got a very, very good reason to do so. So you have to go back in time about 3 years ago, and it's a hospital, and they wanted to, hospital in Flanders, and they wanted to implement a new way of work. So they wrote out a tender, they did some testing and all that kind of stuff. And at the end, they concluded they wanted Citrix. At that time, Zen Desktop, Zen App, that kind of technology, that kind of product names. I know it's all changed nowadays, but they went that route. They chose for a typical a standard device, a thin client, unfortunately not IGEL. And then they started deploying, but it got delayed, and you know how that goes with tenders, and people lose some time. And then suddenly, when the actual deployment came and the actual proof of concept was being rolled out, Windows Virtual Desktop was very prominent in the market. And at one point they asked themselves, we really need Citrix for a lot of users, because we need that flexibility. We need all these add-ons that Citrix delivers us for the very specific medical users. But do we really need all that functionality for the administrative users? Because maybe if we spend a little less per user from that side, we could maybe roll out more licenses. And so in the end, they did that. So they said, okay, we do Citrix for the majority, and a few users are, or a limited number of users are Microsoft Virtual Desktop only. But then the problem came, they wanted a uniform client device that would be able to connect to both and would be able to adapt to either or if something changed in the demand of the user. And their thin client selection they made turned out to be not capable of doing that. So they ended up to IGEL again, and so they bought IGEL, and they now have a configuration where they can connect to both environments, and depending on the situation, they go to Citrix or Virtual Desktop Native. And that is actually a very cool example. And of course, they don't have this anywhere use, although a lot of doctors use them from their home office. But just wanted to sketch it out. And it's all managed through one IGEL UMS managing the entire infrastructure. So that's the example I want to give you. Unfortunately, as the documents are not official, I cannot give you the name of the hospital in question. We are currently looking at making it a case study, so we can really mention everything by name, but for the moment we just have to say it's a big hospital in Flanders, and that's about it, what I can tell you about. So in summary, why IGEL? Well, it's actually quite simple. IGEL OS allows you to connect to your workspaces using hardware of your choice in a secure, centrally managed and cost-efficient way. I think that's the best summary of what it is. And if you don't just have to believe me. I mean, just try it for yourself. You can go to our website, download the software from igel.com. Yeah, you can't miss it. There's a button on the right top saying free download. That's actually what it is, a free download. It's a 90-day license that you can download, and it works perfect. So it's got no limitations. It's only got a time limitation. That's it. You could always, if you don't want to install the software, just send me an email, and I will get you a demo UD Pocket. Yeah, I've got loads of them here in my home office, and I will send them happily to you. And if you still want to test the hardware unit, you can do that too. Just get in contact with us or go to the website. You can request it over there. And with that, I am, I think, exactly in my 15 minutes. So back to you, our friends from Arrow.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Arjan. Thank you, Rogier. Thanks, everybody, for the clear presentation. We did receive a couple of questions, maybe one general housekeeping question. Will we get the presentations afterwards? The link to the presentations will be sent over together with a link of the recording. So yes, you will get the presentations as well. And then I have a specific question for Jan. The question is also with Chromebooks, question mark. So I guess this is related to the IGEL OS and whether or not is this also, it can work also on the Chromebooks.
Well, the answer, as always, you have to be, it's not a yes or no, it's a yes and no. It depends on the hardware of the Chromebook. If you listened if you looked at the slide, it said that it has to be an x86 64-bit processor. So if your Chromebook is running such a compatible processor, then the answer is yes. If your Chromebook is running an ARM and both versions exist, then the answer is no. The only Raspberry Pi, but I don't think there's a lot of Chromebooks that run on Raspberry Pis, but the only Raspberry Pi we officially support is the M Computing RX 420, which is a typical device designed for thin client use. So a Chromebook, yes, if the hardware is compliant, because it's got nothing to do with the actual Chrome OS, it's got to do with the hardware underneath. So yes or no, depending on the situation.
Okay, it's never easy. It's always the gray area.
Yes.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for that. So I don't see any other questions. Feel free if somebody has any questions to still ask them, because if not, then I think we can wrap up this session. Again, the presentations and the link to the webinar, to the recording of this webinar will be provided to the partners so that you can rewatch it when finally the weather comes and the bars will be open. You can enjoy it on a sunny terrace while drinking a glass of wine. Thank you for the participants. Thank you, Rogier. Thank you, Arjan. Thank you, Jan, for the clear explanations. Thank you, Michiel, for organizing this event. If you have any further questions, you can always send us an email to the email address that you see on your screen right now. If it's a specific question for one of our guest speakers, I will definitely contact them or forward the email. If not, I will answer it myself. Or for any other questions regarding Citrix or the collaboration with our partners, don't hesitate to contact us. Again, thank you everybody for joining. Thanks for our guest speakers, and we'll see you next time. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.